Okay, good evening, gentlemen. This is video 16 out of 100. 2 weeks in, a little over 2 weeks in, and we're going strong. So, tonight, why don't we discuss obsession? So, obsession is always something that has piqued my curiosity. I've been obsessed over things from time to time, but I've never quite had a lifelong obsession. There are a lot of movies and shows and things like that out there where it's about someone who's obsessed with something and they just become the best ever. And that's usually how it works. When you're obsessed with something, you pursue it relentlessly and nothing else gets in your way. And that's a good state of mind to be in. You kind of want to be in that frame of, if you're pursuing something, if you're really, really trying to get somewhere and you have some kind of dream that you're trying to knock out of the park, you really want to obsess over it. And I know certain people disagree with that, but I don't think there's any other way. You have to become obsessed with whatever it is that you're targeting. So what does that really look like? Someone who spends 6+ hours a day doing one task, practicing whatever the hell it is that he's obsessed with or pursuing and trying to get there, that's obsession. Throwing your balls on the line and like risking it all, again, that's obsession. Sometimes obsession can look like a gambling addiction, and that is an obsession, and we call it an addiction because we want to view it in a negative light rather than in a positive light. And even the word obsession kind of has this little negative tinge to it that people don't really. You say that you're. What would they say? Oh, you're obsessed with this woman. Like you don't really want to be. That's one thing I will say also. Let me just put that on record. You don't really want to be obsessed with women as a man. But regardless, nevertheless, you need to pursue things full force, and it comes out being purely obsessed with something. So when I decided to become an entrepreneur, that was like 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago at this point, I became obsessed, and I became obsessed with this vision. And it all was sparked from a friend of mine. So this friend of mine, he's in his 50s. I think he's in his 50s. I don't even know how freaking old he is. But he's absolutely fantastic, man. He was a financial mentor of mine. I've actually mentioned a theory, or I don't know if I'd say theory, a concept of his that he taught me, and it was the 3 different ways that you can be involved with money, like the ways to develop a skill that's involved with money to really get your hands on it. And that was the managing money, the short term, basically a skill where you exponentially increase your money, and you 600% your money in 3 months because you have some kind of crazy skill. And the third one is passive assets and passive income, which is more like there's a lot of forms of that. There's real estate. That's the one that everyone kind of knows because it's so simple. It's so simple and straightforward. Get a house and throw a guy in it, right? Or if you're one of these guys that specializes in those kind of passive assets, then it would be something more like throw up a big skyscraper and turn them into apartments, right? And rent it out to 600 people or however many people. So that's absolutely a skill because it's not easy to do that. Passive assets are actually quite difficult. But anyway, don't want to go off on that rabbit trail. But my friend, he kind of showed me the ropes, and he showed me Kiyosaki, and he showed me Kiyosaki's game Cash Flow, And that something clicked when I played that game. The thing that clicked was what the game's trying to teach. The idea of not being beholden to a job and not being beholden, well, really to anyone financially. So it doesn't matter. You have your assets, they're up and going. You don't have to listen to anyone. You don't have to take anyone's shit anymore. And that's like mobster boss status. That's like what warm-blooded male doesn't want to be of that status. So I became obsessed, and I became obsessed with pursuing that. I'm still pursuing it. It's not easy, man. It's really not easy. It's easy as hell when you play the game because it's like bloop 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 bloop. Oh yeah, just buy the house. Anyway. But you have to be obsessed. If you want to get there, you have to sacrifice a lot, man. And you have to develop a certain kind of mind. And if you've been an employee all your life, like I was, there's a lot of undoing that you have to do, and it's not easy. I kind of came from a pretty disadvantageous point, because not only was I an employee, but I hadn't been taught jack shit. I had zero skills at all, zero life skills. I was hardly valuable at all, even though I made okay money at my job, This is the and this is the issue with jobs, especially white collar jobs. Good God. At least blue collar jobs, you're usually learning some kind of tangible physical skill. White collar jobs, you're just farting around, and they're awful. Office jobs, freaking The Office actually nails that pretty well, where there's the only guy that does anything in the damn office is the sales guy. Like, they're the only ones that matter. Everyone else is just sort of ornamental, just sort of there. And that's pretty much what office jobs are. There's always tons of useless middle management, tons of bitchy people, and it's just awful. If you're in one of those kind of positions and you're not either some kind of engineer, like a software guy, something like that, or you're in marketing, or you're in sales. If you're anything else, I don't even know what. There's a lot of useless skills that don't teach you jack shit. Unless you're in any of those three, leave your damn job and get a new one. Just get a job in sales. Just get a job in sales or marketing. They're so much more valuable, and you'll learn so much more. You'll be able to scale that and expand that, and you can do so much more with that, and you're so much more valuable if you not only develop those things, but you also have the experience and the confidence where you can go out and approach people, random people, and make them offers. That's huge. If you don't know what the fuck you're doing, your offer is going to be weak because you're going to come off weak. People can sense that. So if we're going to obsess about something, what is worth obsessing over? I know for me, financial freedom, the idea of financial freedom, which is like a buzzword, and I don't really like using it because it's one of these cliche things that people talk about. And therefore I don't like anything that's mainstream, because anything that's mainstream is just not creative, and it's not intelligent, because if it were either of those things, it wouldn't be mainstream. I mean, it starts out creative, right? And maybe it starts out intelligent, but in order for something to be mainstream, you have to be able to communicate it properly to the average person, and the average person is stupid. But anyways, it's okay to be stupid. I don't have a problem with people being stupid. It's fine. It's just, I don't know, it's my pride and my ego speaking, I suppose. But financial freedom is definitely something to obsess over. Building a skill is another thing to obsess over. because building the skill is what's going to make you wind up at that point of financial freedom. And then from there, it's building blocks. So it really depends on what if you have some grandiose, crazy ass dream, like I'm going to be president of the United States, hats off, man. You have a lot of fucking work to do. But I'm not saying it's impossible. I mean, look, shit, man, Trump did it. Like, really sit and think about that for a second. Donald Trump, he wasn't random. He's actually quite talented, but it's a real estate guy. He had nothing in politics whatsoever, and he's a freaking president. It's nuts. So it's definitely possible. All things are possible. All things are possible to one who believes. There it is. And that's another thing to obsess over, by the way. I would say, if we're going to talk about like different pillars of life, we would say there's your financial life. This looks horrible. I really need to work on my hand gestures and stuff. I look like I'm doing the Egyptian dance. You have your financial life, you have your health, physical health. It's another thing that you should obsess over. You have basically your calling, whatever you feel like you're called to do, which is your skill, right? So if you're a sales guy, then that's something you should obsess over. If you're a speaker, you have to obsess over that, man. You have to be the best that you can be. What else are you doing? You watch some TV show or something stupid, like whatever. You can do that too. Just obsess over these things. So there's those three. There'd be I would say your relationship with God, whatever you want to fill in the blank, right? Your relationship with that thing, with existence itself, which is what God is. And I guess in your relationships, your actual relationships, like your family, your friends, and that kind of thing. Those are important to semi-obsess over those things and make sure that your community is doing always on point and doing okay and building it and building it and building it, right? To make it as strong and as solid as you possibly can. You don't want to have a weak community. That actually might be the most important one to start at. If you have a weak community, that shit influences you, man. People's energy is just, they just spray it all over you. It's like and it just sprays, and you have all these little specks on you, and it just drains you. You don't want to be around a bad community. Anyway, I would say that's 5 things to obsess over. Each one of those you could obsess over those for your entire life and they'll never be perfect. So fantastic, right? Always get better. There's always a place to improve. That's cool. I would say financial freedom would be one of the first goals in your financial life, unless you're like really handicapped financially and you don't know how to do things like keep a budget, then maybe you want to start there with all the Dave Ramsey kind of shit. I hate Dave Ramsey, by the way. He's really good for the basics. He's really good for the idea of getting out of debt and setting a budget and stuff, but he's just, I don't know, he's really boring. He's boring and thoughtless. And he doesn't tell, I think my biggest issue with Dave Ramsey is that he doesn't teach what he did. And it's like, what the hell, man? You're not going to teach, like, he's so hyper anti-risk. He's like the least risky guy of all time in what he teaches. But what he actually does, it's like he went balls to the wall and made his own radio show and shit, and he's highly ambitious. Like, but he doesn't really teach any of that. And it's like he doesn't want people to climb up to where he is, which is kind of, I don't know. rubs me the wrong way. I'll tell you that, and it gives me a little bad feeling about him. But he's fucking killed it. Killed it a lot better than I have. I'll tell you that right now. So, hats off to him, and got to give respect where it's due. I just wish he would teach something a little more sophisticated, maybe. But regardless, I would say with your relationships, it would be good to a degree you don't have to 100% cut off bad people, but you got to know your boundaries, man. You got to know your boundaries. Like, good God. And that is something that our culture is very hostile to. If you ever try to make any kind of judgment about someone, you'll get thrown to the freaking wolves. And everyone knows this. We all know this, man. So it's very important to obsess over who you're hanging out with and obsess over, like, reanalyzing that and revisiting that and making sure that these are the people that you want to be around. I honestly wouldn't. I would go so far as to say you shouldn't hang around people who you don't want to be like. Not very often, anyways. And if you are going to do that, because it's like family or something, like, I still hang around with my family from time to time. There are, like, some of them I just absolutely refuse to see. And I don't have a problem with that. But immediate family, yeah. I mean, there's a part of you that withers away if you don't do that. And trust me, my family is absolutely psychotic. But I go in with that expectation, right? So when I'm going to visit one of them, I know what I'm getting myself into. And I step into that with that certain frame of mind, right? I know that I'm not here to... I tried this shit before. You're not here to rescue anyone. You're not here to change anyone's mind. You're not here to, like, be the hero, etc., 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 unless you haven't tried it before. If you haven't tried it before, give it a whirl, and you'll find out just how absolutely psychotic and resistant people are to that kind of thing. And be my guest. I mean, yeah, I can talk about that shit all day. People are really set in their ways, certain types of people. And when you start getting into, like, serious personality disorders and things like that, it's just no bueno. Anyway, always be looking at that and always be analyzing that. And just, you have to, absolutely have to. That, I would say, if you're kind of brand new to all this, that's a really good place to start. Analyzing relationships that you have. Relationships with people, but not just people. Your relationship with your own life and yourself. And your relationship with, I want to say, the relationship with God. If you don't believe in God, you have to look at it through this lens then. Your relationship with existence itself. Right? And some people refer to that as the universe, which is a really gay way to refer to it, so I'm not going to say that. Anyway, that's its own animal. That is its own realm. And that has to be addressed too. And you have to obsess over that. That's probably the easiest thing to obsess over. But sometimes you have to leave friends behind. Friends. Because they're not really your friends. And you have to have the gall to call it out, right? To confront them on whatever the hell they're doing. You have to have the balls to do that. And then you have to have the backbone to put the wall up, I guess. You have to be willing to draw the line in the sand and say, if you cross this, fuck you, I'm never speaking to you again. You have to be willing to do that kind of thing. If you're not, you'll get swept away. You'll get swept away by these people around you. They'll eat you alive. People will absolutely just tear you apart, steal everything from you, and just leave you there withered and dead if you let them. Not wise, not wise. Anyway, that's probably, out of all the things, out of all five of those things, relationships, that thing, relationships, and the relationship with God are probably the two that I've personally worked on most and what I have most experience with. Beyond that, it would probably be, would I put finance or health first? I'd probably put physical health and then finance and then the calling. That's probably the right order for me. Despite, so yes, I quit my job 3 years ago, but before that, I started doing cleanup on my relationships, and it needed a lot of cleaning up. And cleanup I did. And now here we are, and it's a lovely life. I don't know how else to put it. It's a very lovely life. So we all have to start somewhere. That's actually a really good idea. I like what I just did. Write those 5 things out and just, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and mark which ones you feel you're strongest in. And look at the one that you're weakest in, because what's going to happen, I'll tell you what's going to happen. Whatever one you're weakest in is going to bleed out into those other ones. So if you feel weakest in relationships, that's going to show up in all other aspects of life. I can almost guarantee you that will happen. It's the same with your relationship with God. These atheist types, I feel sorry for these atheist types. The ones who just won't, especially the ones who are so curious, about God and the church and all this fantastic stuff. I feel sorry for these guys because they're so close. They're so close to taking their first step in something that they've never explored, that they've never seriously explored. You know what? Okay, I don't care if you claim that you believed in God when you were 20, and then you just got washed away from the culture just washed you away, and now I'm this cool rebellious atheist guy. I've met those guys before. They're fucking clowns and they're nobodies. And when you actually try to press them on anything relevant to God, they have nothing. They have absolutely nothing. It's all talk. It's all God, doctrine and this kind of crap. It's a freaking verse that they memorize, and it means nothing to them because they never went through anything where it would internalize itself within them. So why would it mean something? Whatever. Those guys are so close. Not the ones that have ran away and take pride in being an atheist. Those guys are usually idiots. But the guys who are actually curious. And that's another thing you need. You need curiosity. All 5 of those things. You need curiosity in abundance. I would say if you're going to be obsessed over any of those things, curiosity has to be one of the top things that you become. You have to be curious and you have to be grateful for all things. You have to be grateful for the failures. They teach you so much. Failure teaches you way more than success. That goes for anything. That goes for relationships. That goes for money. That goes for health. All that crap. It teaches you. It teaches you so much more than you realize. And we always try to avoid, we try to avoid failures and it's one of these things where it's no, dude, just embrace it. Go in with the expectation that you're going to fucking lose because you're going to lose. And if you get lucky, well, great. You're going to fucking lose at some point. So get ready for it and just don't let it faze you. I think the fear of failure might be the biggest reason why people settle for all this, for a 9 to 5 in a job that they hate. It's the fear of failure. They think if I try to do this, it's just not gonna work. I'm gonna fail. So why even bother? It's stupid. You don't know the future. And yeah, you might fail, but who cares? You write your own future. When you do that, you may as well just dig a hole in the ground and jump in and bury yourself because that's what you're doing. Anyway, so I would say if you're one of the fortunate people who are like the people from shows and movies who are just obsessed with something, like you see this a lot with people who are born into certain families. So if my dad's a famous musician, then odds are he's obsessed with music, and that's gonna pass down to me. Then I'm gonna be obsessed with music too. And maybe that's not your route, but I would say family is the closest thing that you're gonna have when growing up. Obviously, I don't think there's any way to question that. And what you're always around, what's constantly influencing you. So as a kid, I mean, your parents are obviously going to influence you every single day of your life. So take advantage of that. What is that? Someone's getting water. Anyway, take advantage of what family you're born into. And that can build resentment as well, which sucks, but don't let that happen. Take advantage of it instead. Always keep your head up. Always take the opportunity when it comes your way, if it's something that's worthwhile. Anyway, this is a good spot to end this video. Yep. Ciao.